Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me here. And this session so far has been very interesting. So just to say, my name is Martyn Chamberlain. I'm working with Unit A4 and DG Research Innovation in the European Commission, which is the unit on open science and research infrastructure. So the open science part we deal with as open access publishing for academic journals and encouraging this, and also things like the EOS. We have quite a lot of the European Open Science Cloud, so we're managing that along with DG Connect. And the other main part of our unit is research infrastructure. So we're the ones that are writing the work program, the three core topics, the emphasis of the coordinator outlined just before the coffee breaks. So that's where I'm working at the moment. And I'd like to talk to you about so firstly, the ESFRI landscape analysis, and also talk about the ESFRI Roadmap, which is basically the update of new, current projects on the landmark, the ESFRI Roadmap from 2021, plus also new potential projects. So, for example, the progress proposal, which will then be evaluated. It's going to be a process which will take the best part of 2 years. So it's a long process. Just and then maybe just add one other thing. So maybe you're not so aware. I think Giovanni mentioned it at the beginning. He showed the slide with like beginning of projects and then the hill and then going back down. It's a kind of typical project lifestyle. But for research infrastructures, they go on for a lot longer. So I mean, it's a very long term thing. But as far as ESFRI is concerned, it stands for the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructure. It basically consists of like representatives from member states and associated states that arise in Europe. They have like 2 ministry reps and 2 technical experts. And it's an expert group of the Commission, and basically they get together to try and coordinate their own national research infrastructure roadmaps and help the Commission plan the course for the work program, things like this. But the ESFRI itself doesn't have any money to fund any. It's the member states that do. So just the other thing is that ESFRI also produces a landscape analysis. So this was done already in June of this year. I think at the end there's a link, but I can send it to you. But I just concentrate. There's different thematic areas, so environment, energy, health, and food. So obviously, I concentrate more here on food, and it states that there's strong links between environmental, food, lifestyle, and health issues. And then this very much depends on the environment and it affects the environment too. The nutritional habits and food quality affect health, and food safety, food composition needs healthy, unpolluted environment. And the agri-food sector is a significant source of greenhouse gas emission, but also can help to contribute to mitigate that. And then we found through the COVID crisis that the links between food, biodiversity, health, and climate, and the need for a One Health approach. And then the farm to fork strategy sets out the agri-food system goals, fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly, and aims to accelerate transition to a more sustainable agro-food value chain. And then the agri-food sector major challenges include sustainable food production in an increasingly variable climatic environment, and then needs as well to adapt to the climate change that we're experiencing. And of course, we've had the recent geopolitical tensions and war that affect the supply issues for basic commodities and costs for raw materials used in food production, and also for the feed for animals and fertilizer and fuel, etc. And then we need to consider the food security in a global context. There's significant health challenges, particularly the last couple of decades, linked to poor diet and obesity, undernutrition, malnutrition, which hampers the quality of life and life expectancy. So just to look at a couple more trends in the domain, which comes, you can read this in the roadmap if you wish to later. So there's a triple planet crisis, the climate change, pollution, and loss of biodiversity, which impact both health and food production in Europe. And I think someone talked earlier about the vector-borne diseases which are now threatening crops in southern Europe. And there's a trend towards providing open access and developing open data policies, like I said at the EOS report. And although there's an increasingly accepted approach to open data and research, it's also raised some questions which need to be addressed. And then considering research infrastructures for health, but also in general, we're encouraging more contact with industry and service to industry, but there needs to be optimized business models for the services to the private sector. Okay, then just one last slide about the landscape analysis. So this could be quite interesting for people from emphasis, because in the landscape analysis, there's some very specific references which I summarized here. So there's a call for cross-disciplinary, integrated, and multiple-level way of addressing scientific problems, questions. But according to the ESFRI landscape analysis, they identified some gaps related to phenotyping of biotechnological improvements for animal farming systems, livestock and fish. And they say that the characterization is not included within emphasis, and it doesn't have, at the moment, the required infrastructure to develop such phenotyping studies in animals. That's according to the landscape. So that's something you may wish to discuss a bit more in detail with your ESFRI reps if you have a slightly different opinion, but this is what's in the landscape analysis. And the other one is to further consider capabilities for animal phenotyping studies, fish species, and uses in agriculture. So I'm not I'm not an expert in health and food, but that's what the people from ESFRI said. Okay, so we go to the next bit. I don't have so much time like everyone else. So I think this is maybe what you're more interested in. So evaluation of the proposal for new project to the ESFRI Roadmap, which is what you're particularly interested in today. So there will be an info day. I think my colleague Renee said there's already one or two of you registered for that. So you really need to have one or two people there for sure, because then they will go through the guidance documents and questionnaires and everything. But what I can tell you, there was a 2021 roadmap exercise. And if you look on the ESFRI website, you can see the documentation for that. And the new one is almost the same. So if you want to start preparing, you can look at that over the summer, and then to get the definitive version. It's not fully approved by the ESFRI delegates yet, which will be in September, so I can't share any details, but I've got some details, but you'll be able to see, if you basically look at the 2021 guidance, guidelines, and questionnaires, it's more or less the same. And so, again, they're open for the call for proposals will be the 8th of October, and then you have to submit a proposal by the 8th of April, so that's a hard date, like Horizon Europe grants, you can't unfortunately miss it. Then there'll be questions and invitations to hearings, and so basically in the meantime, the ESFRI experts will look at proposals, they will engage experts from the scientific domain and also implementation experts, like project management, impact, such as impact and things like this, and finance. And then after the questions and then the hearing will be in February 2026. And then this information from the hearings and the questionnaires that you submitted will be processed, and then it will be put forward to the ESFRI forum for a formal decision in June, September, and then you'll know, I guess you have an idea beforehand, but then it'll be officially announced in December. Okay, so these things are very important. So the first one is you need a political proof of political support by a lead country plus 2 other member states or associated countries. So I guess emphasis knows this because they did it a few years ago, but it's a very similar process. So you need these member states ministries, so your science ministry has to write an official document. It can't just be an email or word, it's the official document. And then you need a proof of financial commitment. And the expression of commitment has the member state, the lead member state is going to contribute to the preparation and implementation phases by the appropriate authority from the lead country. And that's one thing I'd say is that for these ESFRI landmark and projects, the funding initially all comes from the member states, and then we give grants of a few million, but like each member state is putting quite a few million in the beginning, so you need the money from the member states, otherwise they won't fly. And then you need to prove a memorandum of understanding like you would do in a consortium agreement for a project between the different countries, how you're going to work. Okay. It's just two more. So this is the evaluation. So again, you can look in the previous roadmap, 2021 documentation. So there'll be scientific experts from ESFRI and some outside experts, like produce evaluation, and they will evaluate on the basis of scientific excellence and European relevance. So you has to be European, can't just be very niche part of Europe, it has to be pan-European. The socio-economic impact, user structure and access policies, like you say, you're rocking a lot of transnational analysis. So this is extremely important. And then the e-needs and data. So you have to also mention about the else, how you make the data fair and open, useful, etc. And then the only thing that's really going to be different from what I understand is pretty green is the environmental consideration. That wasn't there previously. So it's considering the impact of the new research infrastructure on the environment and how it would run in the face of like continuing high energy costs and to minimize CO2 emissions. Because in the plant business, that's quite good. That's catch some of that. But there'll be a case you have to make about that. Then there's only one more slide. And so the last one is the evaluation of the implementation case. So how much commitment do you have from stakeholders? Is there a need for the research infrastructure? Who are you going to serve? How good has been the preparatory work and planning? Because as said just before the break, it takes time. So there's all these different kind of steps. It's like, it's like doing a project, but it's like building a new infrastructure. So there's a lot of planning that needs to be done. So how well it's planned and proceed. I guess the 5 to 10 years it takes to become a project or a landmark. Then the governance, management, human resources. Yes, for generics, we have this. People say that potentially issues when you have people employed in, if the coordination is split across more than one country, you have people employed on different country contracts, employment contracts, and if they want to move, then so you have to be aware of these sort of issues, how you're going to manage it, how you're going to govern it, and where the money's going to come from, and I guess as well as having some financial commitment just from the lead country, it might be advantageous to have some other commitments from other countries as well. And then any risks, so you need to do a very comprehensive risk analysis like you would do in research for this infrastructure. So that's basically about it. And the idea is then that if you get successful to be on a project on the roadmap, then you normally get about 10 years, and then if it develops to become a landmark. And at the moment, there's like 63 ESFRI projects and landmarks together. And the only thing I would say, you have to make the case for this for the progress project as strong as possible, because because of the crisis that we've had in the last 2 or 3 years, the member states are sort of getting the commitments they have, because they're going to have to give a few million each to set up an infrastructure. But they've got, some of them are involved in 20 odd research infrastructure, so you multiply that. And they have to give commitments every 5 years to keep continuing research infrastructure. So you have to really demonstrate that there's a real need to have a new research infrastructure, because it was maybe being a little bit more competitive this time than it was, say, 5 years ago. Okay, so that's what I want to say.
Thank you very much, Martyn. Very interesting.
A couple of questions. One is, so the commitment has to be 5 years, not 10.
No, sorry, that's just I mean, normally when they're established, it's every 5 years they update them, but I haven't let the fine details of it. Well, because the idea is that it stays as a project for 10 years and then it's evaluated. So you have to read carefully what they ask for. It's like 5 or 10.
And does it have to have a hard figure? So the letter of the ministry's rights in support has to have the number of euros they are going to the people who just general.
I mean, to be honest, because the ESFRI is organised by the member states with the secretariat, but I've only been in research for 2.5 years, so it was last one was for me, but just asked that question on October the 8th and say, well, tell me the answer. I mean, I would imagine the more information, more of a commitment you can get from your member state, the better it's going to go. But I don't know what the minimum threshold commitment is required, but you can ask that and they will tell you.
Third question is, we were told that it's useful once you have established that a country will participate to establish early a joint research units between the different partners of the country, so that there is only one legal subject that interacts with the ministry. Correct?
I mean, I would have thought, from what I know from the generics, they tend to have national notes and then they coordinate the other research instruments in their country. I just think it makes life so much easier. But yes, I forgot the name, so the roller will probably you have to comment.
I can maybe. I think in terms of distributed infrastructure, makes sense to build the national community. So, in a country, you may have many different institutions interested in a specific topic. And then in research infrastructure, you multiply it. We have 20 countries, times 20, it's impossible to discuss, to keep the discussion going. So I mean, to represent the country out. And having something like a mandated process where you have a certain agreement with the country, which is the mandated representative of the country, the problem in the emphasis. It works differently in a big physics infrastructure where you have one machine and then multiple countries contributing and use the access, so it's easier. But for us, with this widely distributed infrastructure, we need to have this integration process.
I mean, I think it would make sense to have coordinate body in each member state, and maybe you wouldn't necessarily have to have a legal agreement when you submit a proposal. You show how far down the road you are, and you expect to have that in place when you want.
Maybe a comment, so you point out that the environment of understanding which is sufficient for a country, for the scientific communities, also towards approaching the national ministries. So you approach the ministries as a community and not as a single institution. That helps as well.
It's because I think the ministries now are a bit more aware of ESFRIs and research structures, but it's still, I think it makes their life so much easier. Resources they have, if you go to one consistent contact point for each country to achieve.
One last question. On the respect international, so the full partners and the associates, can they participate to the country in which they have their legal office?
So you mean you're intending to have some of the main partners, or
Like
will be from
just to say, ECPGR, Secretariat of ECPGR, and it's classified not as a national organization, as an international organization. The headquarters are in Italy. Can we include them, these memorandum of
I think you can, because there are, I don't remember examples, I can't remember the top of the head, but there are some, like in the health area, where there's some, for example, for Elixir, one partner, which I forgot who it is an international organization that's participating, and they use some of their legal structure. Elixir goes through that international organization. They're not an area, so it's easy, but I think there's not an objection that you, but again, we'll clarify that in October.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martyn. So now we invite Sandra to the floor, and also for any follow-up communication. The online participants shared that we could not hear some speakers well. I was born half deaf, and that's why I speak louder than average, but it's always helpful to speak loud and clear through the microphone to get the message across. But now let's look into what we have potentially in mind for future research infrastructure, and with ECPGR and in particular also Sandra involved in the Progress project. She took the, let's say, or she was asked to coordinate among the projects to build a presentation of the project partners, what we have in mind. So very much looking forward to the fruits.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you all for this very interesting afternoon and the interesting discussions. I know I'm going into the actual interactive session that we wanted to have, and but I will try to be as concise as possible. So I'm presenting, if I manage. This is not working. Okay, technical issues again.
No, try now.
No. Okay, manages. All right, I'm presenting here on behalf of the Progress Consortium, our idea of this European research infrastructure for plant genetic resources. Without going too much into detail, I want to repeat that our plant genetic resources for food and agriculture are an important public good with some challenges, but also many opportunities. And we want to work on that. I'd like to show this this slide, which highlights on the left the development of agriculture from a very diverse fields over the last 100 years to the loss of very many crop varieties through genetic erosion, so that now in the fields we have a very high yielding varieties, but we've lost a lot of diversity. On the other hand, we have had, as also Jens was mentioning, some scientists that very early on identified the need for conservation of these varieties. And so since the 1920s, those scientists have collected a lot of varieties and land races in the fields, on the markets, and also crop wild relatives in nature, and have put them into the custody of gene banks and their collections. In addition to the loss of varieties in the field, we also lost crop wild relatives in nature with the loss of biodiversity, with up to 35% estimated to be threatened by extinction. And Giovanni highlighted the importance of conserving biodiversity. And when we look at Europe on these maps on the left, we can see that we are center of extreme species richness, both for the utilized plants up on the top, as well as for crop wild relatives that you can see on the bottom. But the effective conservation and management of this very critical biological infrastructure across Europe is really necessary to address the challenges we have in the projected biodiversity loss. This includes approaches ex situ, in situ, and on farm. We cannot do focus on just one. The genetic resources strategy was also introduced already, and it really highlights the need to start working on many of these aspects that are highlighted to really address the issues that we face with climate change, unreliable resource management, and the limited accessibility of genetic resources, which was mentioned in many questions actually today. We need to ensure that researchers and plant breeders have access to an efficient system of conservation, and we need targeted investments to really explore and exploit this existing diversity. So what we really need is a long-term investment and firm political will, that was already said. We believe that Progress and the Grace RI can be a route to implement this strategy in creating a long-term efficient infrastructure for conservation, documentation, and sustainable use. So this is the graphic that you see in the flyer that we've handed out and also on behind me. It's what does PROGRESS stand for? PROGRESS stands for Promoting a Genetic Resources Community in Europe. And we are working on this concept for a novel research infrastructure focused on the study, conservation, management, and sustainable use of plant genetic resources. The aim is to improve the cataloging, description, preservation of plant genetic resources, enhancing European plant biodiversity, to use and translate the results of scientific research into conservation practices and agricultural innovation, and to also, of course, collaborate with global organizations and initiatives dedicated to plant genetic resources. We have 31 partners in PROGRESS. They come from Europe and also from across the world. And we combine in our consortium expertise in many different aspects of PGR issues that we have heard already today: conservation research, breeding, cultivation, and policy as well. It was also already mentioned that we're not starting from scratch. So we are building on existing initiatives. What is the most important initiative is our plant genetic resources. EURISCA was already mentioned today. And so this is our European Information System for Plant Genetic Resources. And this states that European countries conserve more than 2 million plant genetic resources ex situ. And this is documented in 43 national inventories. On the right, you see the circle size corresponding to the size of the national inventory that is documented in EURISCA. I want to just highlight 2 points. As Jens mentioned, the Nordic countries have joined their national inventories into one collection in Sweden. And the UK circle is somewhat inflated by the presence of the Arabidopsis stock center and the inclusion of those about 600,000 accessions in their national inventory. The PGRFA that are documented are wild and natural populations, traditional cultivars, land traces, breeding, research materials, and also advanced and improved cultivars. We have heard that the conservation in the different countries follows national mandates and also the obligations under those various international treaties that the countries are members of. And we have heard that we need collaborative solutions for the global challenges that are affecting our PGR. We have also heard about the European Corporate Program Plant Genetic Resources. Just to reiterate that this program has been successfully implementing multiple initiatives in PGR conservation since 1980 and is funded by the member countries and relies also heavily on in-kind contributions of countries and organizations. In situ conservation in Europe has also been had a lot of progress in the last few years, mainly also thanks to a lot of European projects such as Farmers' Pride, where this map is coming from. They have the community has developed standards and guidelines for crop wild relatives conservation and management, and also assessed priority taxa and conservation sites across Europe. And you can see on the map an example of that. However, if we look at what's happening in the field, very few countries have really taken this into practice, to initiating in situ genetic research or implementing also any of these standards. But as we've heard, the crop wild relatives that are conserved in these genetic reserves or should be conserved in these genetic reserves are really an important source of diversity for breeders, and we need to start implementing some in situ actions to make them accessible. I also mentioned on-farm conservation. There's also in Europe a network of on-farm conservation. It's called Let's Liberate the Diversity, and it brings together members from 19 different countries that work together with farmers in conserving and managing varieties on farm and for various different crops. And we also have some representatives within our consortium. So we also look into making sure to integrate them into the proposals. European research was also mentioned, of course, Horizon projects, but also national and bilateral project funding in the different countries is available for PGR research, and they all have together generated a lot of valuable knowledge on PGR that we need to make available in for further exploitation. So all in all, basically, the idea is to mainstream. It's a nice political word also to mainstream research on plant genetic resources in a dedicated research infrastructure for plant genetic resources. This would connect the national conservation actions with high quality research to address challenges at a regional level. It would increase the reliability and access to plant genetic resources. It should involve all relevant stakeholders in the value chain. And it would engage with and educate the public on issues relevant for PGR, with the goal to increase the diversity in nature, in our fields, and on our plates ultimately. So what have we done so far in Progress? Progress is using many different approaches to develop the concept for GRACE-RI. We are developing standards for our PGR information system. We have work packages that deal with some of the services that GRACE-RI could provide. That includes the PGR information system, quality certified management of PGR, technologies and services that could be applied on PGR, and also standards for crop evaluation, which we will also go into more detail tomorrow. And then work package 5, which we are leading at ECPGR, is involved in creating or merging all of this information together into a concept for the GRACE-RI, including we have done a gap analysis of the ESFRI infrastructure to position the future GRACE-RI, and to also develop a governance and structure for this research infrastructure, and the socioeconomic analysis that was highlighted as one of the key aspects of this concept creation. We have already delivered some deliverables, and they are available on our website. Standards for displaying phenotypic data or genetic data. We have standards for gene bank and in situ operations, and also for phenotypic evaluations. And we have also developed a simplified sample collection protocol for PGR, which is important if you want to do omics, any type of omics research on your collection. We have done several surveys to identify the main stakeholders of a future infrastructure, and of course, and we group them into 4 main classes or groups, where of course conservation and documentation is the main pillar of our stakeholders, with the genetic resources centers, gene banks, and in situ genetic reserves. They also, of course, interact most with the making sure that the genetic resources are available. The users would be researchers, other research infrastructures that we could interact with, such as emphasis, the private sector through seed companies or other private service providers, but also farmers that would link us directly with the food producers and consumers. In terms of policy interventions, of course, important stakeholders are the policymakers, legislators, and policy experts. We have heard access is a very important issue, and also the obligations towards international instruments. And in terms of networking and capacity, we also identify other conservation and research networks and nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations as important stakeholders. In terms of what types of services Progress could provide within the conservation and documentation aspect, there would be the quality management system in a way, maybe building on experience by gene banks such as CGN. We have identified taxonomy services, and also very importantly, of course, data storage and management. In terms of use are all the research aspects of PGR, including phenotyping, genotyping, metabolic profiling, but also phytosanitary issues that are more and more important. And then, of course, all of them linked to data analysis, which is crucial with the increasing amounts of data that are becoming available. In terms of policy interventions, we have heard a lot about the policy and the regulatory aspects that are at stake with PGRs, and I think we could provide some services there. And in terms of networking and capacity, the need for education, dissemination, and further capacity building was highlighted by many people in the surveys that we did. Within the gap analysis with other research infrastructures, we have clearly identified a gap in the current landscape for our PGR infrastructure. We've looked at several research infrastructures in detail on the right. And with this graph, I just want to highlight how we can complement and interact with some of these research infrastructures on some of the topics that we've identified as services. This is a slide with a lot of text, and I apologize for that. So it's some of the technical aspects that were identified as gaps that GRACE-RI could fill in terms of PGR-related services. So, for example, we can link all the data on multi-omic experiments with the germplasm source materials, and maybe facilitate this the benefit sharing and the discussions that were had with the breeders to make sure that we can trace also material. The integrated quality management and certification system for conservation is highlighted as really important to make sure that the PGR are accessible to users. An integrated system for safety duplication of PGR accessions is also perhaps an aspect that we can fill with the GRACE-RI. We can help identify or help gene banks identify pedigree information, kinship relationships of their accessions. We can identify duplications and gaps in the diversity across European PGR collections. We can help with phytosanitary surveillance, diagnostic tools, and of course, very importantly, with dissemination of the results and also of policies and legal contexts. So we have a number of upcoming important deliverables. We're working a lot on methods and standards for various aspects in PGR management and documentation, including also a blueprint for gene bank QMS and the capacity building programs. We want to recommend unique identifiers for PGR so that the track and trace works more effectively. There are a number of demonstration cases for scientific services for PGR in the pipeline that cover all different omics approaches, genomics, metabolomics, etc. And there is also more work to be done on the standard protocols for PGR evaluation, to which again tomorrow's workshop will add. One of the upcoming deliverables is what we tentatively call at the moment MyPGR, is a proposal for an integrative framework and harmonized set of guidelines and recommendations that identify the critical information necessary to describe a PGR accession. What does that mean? It basically applies semantic data standards and technical standards on a whole set of different and very diverse data, and diverse in terms of how it is provided, and puts it into integrates it into an information system to really generate high value data sets that will foster collaboration and facilitate regulatory compliance and save basically a lot of money. That's the idea. What's happening next? So we are currently building a business case for GRACE-RI, and we want to convince everybody, and especially the countries, that we need to engage in the next phase, that we need increased investment in our PGRFA. It's necessary because we need to enhance the breadth of diversity that's made available to farmers, breeders, and researchers. We need to add value to the PGRFA that are in our collections through high quality conservation documentation and ensuring public access. We need to generate knowledge and fair data on these PGRFA, fair in terms of accessibility and reusability, and I think we hear on that also tomorrow a little bit more. We need to build capacity across Europe to get everybody up to a good standard and to improve the management of our ex situ and in situ conservation. And we need to consolidate our dispersed national and regional resources to create a cost-effective framework for high-quality research on PGR. We and again, we want to use the GRACE-RI to support stakeholders in implementing international agreements, and as a output to provide nature-based solutions for European agriculture and the bioeconomy. We are, as we said, connecting existing initiatives where we are connecting global PGR networks, national conservation programs, seed saver and on-farm networks, in situ conservation networks, the private sector seed and breeding companies, and also public research institutes and projects and other research infrastructures into research infrastructure on PGR, with the goal to improve the conservation and documentation of PGR, conserved ex situ, in situ, and on farm, to improve access to PGR for breeding and research, and to improve biodiversity across Europe in nature and fields and on people's play. What will we do? We will build on and connect better on these initiatives, but we will not replace the existing networks that work so well. We will expand current ex situ networks to integrate new stakeholders, for example, farmers, in situ conservation, and social actors, to complement the ex situ activities through the practical implementation of those networks. We will build capacity to enhance the effective conservation management. We will support agricultural research and innovation to provide strong coordination and facilitate PGR access through instruments and collaborative frameworks that will address today's major societal challenges. And it will thus be crucial for the implementation of and accelerate progress of the EU biodiversity strategy and other policy initiatives. So where we, and I took the liberty of trying to come up with a name for the Progress follow-up project. And the time frame is probably a little bit optimistic, let's say. But what we will be doing in a follow-up project, as Progress has another 12 months to go only, and as we heard, a lengthy process. We will need to engage with member countries and institutions to secure their national and institutional support to establish the GRACE-RI core structure and governance. We need to develop some pilot projects on PGR specific services that we can provide for the community. We will test them to showcase what benefits this research infrastructure can bring. With this, further develop the business case, engage with stakeholders, and grow GRACE-RI through the participation of other countries and organizations. So I hope I have convinced everybody in the room and online that Europe needs a research infrastructure for plant genetic resources that is dedicated to join regional efforts to intensify research on well-conserved plant genetic resources that are conserved in gene banks, in nature and on farm, to address the main challenges that we have in Europe. And on the map on the right, you see in green the holding institutes of our genetic resources according to UNESCO, and maybe you can see it in orange. I have the Progress partners, but maybe they're a little bit so you see stuck in between the green. Anyways, so GRACE-RI will complement existing services and creates synergies with other research infrastructures. And we really believe that it is an opportunity to have an impact, to enable the public good valorization that is so important to help the EU achieve their targets outlined. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there questions on the floor? Or from online? Maybe.
I have online, actually. Can I? Yeah. Sorry? No. Okay. Yeah, I'll come to you. The question.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering if it's really an infrastructure or is more a network. If you go to another infrastructure, they have something for the researcher to be there for doing research. And it's difficult to see what is that. It's an EURISCO Plus. That is an infrastructure, but if I go to my ministry to say to client what is Progress, they are looking for an infrastructure. So how I manage to convince them that it's really an infrastructure, and instead of a network of PCA.
That's a very good question. I don't know, Giovanni, do you want to respond?
Yes. So that's an excellent question. That's, I think, a key point of the difference between ECPGR and GRACE. ECPGR is basically a plant genetic resources conservation community with its great merits. It's also some insufficiency feel, which an insider that will be highlighted. GRACE will be a paradigm shift, so it will not be limited to the land conservation community. It will involve researchers So you have an incredible development, all the research tools, omics tools, etc. In time, genomics, metabolomics, all sorts of omics that you can imagine. And these are the GMAPs, not to mention the in situ conservation. The GMAPs don't have tools to develop those internally because they have a different management. So it's clear that in this business, infrastructure you have to involve centers of excellence in Europe doing research on plants. That will be the second place besides the plant genetic resources community. And as I mentioned in my slide, the last slide, the third component, in my opinion, is breeding community. So there are already initiatives in ECPGR to link, construct public-private networks. These are partnerships. In my view, and we can discuss it, the breeding sector, the private breeding sector, will have to be part of the race since the very beginning to have a clear road to contribute financially and to benefit. So one topic that's the most difficult not to crack, how we get involved private companies and what we expect exactly from the places. But I think the gas infrastructure will stand on 3 feet. One of them is the conservation community. The other one is the plant research community. The third one, private dreams. That's my answer, but maybe Sandra is a different.
Okay, so maybe to add on to what Giovanni was saying, so we've been discussing the how this could interact with ECPGR and how it might be affecting, and maybe we have also members of our executive committee who perhaps can comment on that, but the fact that, as Giovanni said, that the goal of ESFRI is to really connect what we are doing within ECPGR more effectively, I would say, with the user community. I think the aspects of the legal and access issues are something that we can perhaps improve with the ESFRI. I maybe also someone from or Martyn could comment on the fact that a research infrastructure doesn't necessarily have to be a CERN, a particle collider. It can be a network of players that are more actively involved. So I think we are currently working on how we can create the structure around these ideas, and we will obviously take input from the community into this aspect.
Yeah.
Thank you. I heard the question, and in my opinion, I'm not sure ECPGR is the only partner in this system. ECPGR is a network, a community of who has experience in conservation, characterization, evaluation, documentation, and use. So in this context, and what I would say also that most of GBACs as they will say for Netherlands, most of children are connected to research activities. They are not always doing so, but they are connected and they are working with. So it's a mix. The idea maybe could be to contribute to a research infrastructure by this experiment in conservation, characterization, and valorization of plant genetic resources. And to me, the documentation aspect with now the identification by a unique code of each accession is very important in a context where we have an ESFRI context environment who can contribute to the documentation on various sectors. And when we heard Martyn saying that today, looking at ESFRI environment, it was, they identified a lack concerning cross-sectoral research. Well, if you have solid documentation and update of documentation, regular updates using all evaluation and characterization certified data, of course, in a database, you will have here a fantastic way for all scientists from different sectors of research to contribute to connected research questions.
So maybe also a short comment on the justification of progress. Is it research infrastructure or not? And what came into my mind are research infrastructures that are complement more similar, like potentially GRACE research infrastructure, which would be intra-frontier or BBMRI. There is MIRI, so they are biobanks. They are collecting biosamples. So MIRI microbial communities that they provide as a service to the community in some kind of a standardized way. This is an added value to organize that by experts to avoid duplication of efforts in many different countries. So this is something where I see a large benefit of GRACE RI, where we try to reduce the duplication of efforts. You provide standards that you can discuss within the community, so it goes beyond a network. So it's not just a network interacting, but it will be a very clear service that's, from my perspective, justified as a research infrastructure in this context.
Any follow-up statements or? Okay, then we bring some.
Yes.
Sandra, some questions?
I have one. Thank you, Roland, for your support perspective. It's very important. There were a couple of questions online. There was one question from Frank River from Corteva, the definition of nature-based. Well, it's one of those keywords that you put into your presentation, into your proposal, to sell it to policymakers. Nature-based, I guess anything that is based on nature. Like I would argue that our PGR are very much nature based. So I think there might be a better definition in online, but yeah, I'm sure. Then a question from Pedro Verdilla, he's asking whether funding is available to pay farmers to do in situ and on-farm conservation. So I think financial support is necessary. There's someone in the audience who wants to comment, Ana Maria? No? Or Ricardo, maybe you can comment on that because you are representing the on-farm community.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone, Ricardo. I think that farmers, they have some money from the Common Agricultural Policy, at least in Italy, if they would like to conserve local varieties. So if they would have, I think also the countries, they would have access to money. And it's not a lot of bureaucracy, so it's not really a very good system in place. But yeah, we have. And as far as the micro, I would like also to add something, a comment about the discussion we have. Maybe I think we have to enlarge our vision about the actors, because I've been involved in this idea of public-private partnerships since years. With Lorenzo, could be 20 years. And the idea is always the private actors, they are seed companies. We have this in mind, private means seed company, then we have public means gene banks. I think that it's quite much more complicated. Maybe it could be this situation 20 years ago, but it's not the same now. We have farmers, we have other private actors like my organization, we have the seed network, there are community banks even in Europe. So there are many different actors, and there are also different breeders. We usually we treat the actors as, let's say, a category that is uniform. That's not true. We have seed companies, but within seed companies, we have organic seed companies, conventional, big, small, and they have different needs. They're working with different varieties, they have different breeding programs, and they look at different characteristics on the variety. The same for farmers. We talk about farmers, but we have many different kinds of farmers. And there are farmers organizations of collective action with farmers. So the world is very complicated, and we are partners of Prograde. And our understanding is that in Prograde, we can address also complexity through a dedicated governance system. So that's also one objective for us. So this
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Yeah, so I think maybe we certainly need to think a bit more how we can connect all these different actors and how we can do this effectively. We could think about also learning from examples in some countries, apply them to other countries. And this is maybe something that the AGRIS or I could also look into. There was two questions from the UK about scope for organizations not currently part of programs to get involved. I guess we are probably in the next phase open to additions to the consortia. To obviously we need to identify those that are willing to go the next steps with us in any case. So the email is or the website is online, and you can contact us for sure.
Yeah, we'll first, sorry.
I'm gonna look around the question.
Yes.
Engine Stakeholder. Just for example, clarification, Sandra, you mentioned, I mean, the current progress project runs for another 12 months, right? And you showed on one of your slides, your envisaged grace build, sort of one continuous project. I just want to know how far have you come in that process of preparing the continuation of progress? Because obviously you will need an intermediate project in between before eventually establishing the grace hour. Just want to know that.
Maybe I will apply, yeah, so because just I think you addressed, for instance, yeah. because you address maybe to other funding call opportunities. I'm also looking at Giselle, of course, so please correct me, or if you would like to stay, but there are now a few new calls opened under an amendment of Work Program 2024. But I think there is not really something in scope that would fit here. But of course, we have presumably beginning of next year the publication of the Work Program 2025. Where there might be calls, opportunities, as now in CSA action, a research innovation action that could result in a kind of pilot project or spin-off project of this initiative here. So I know that the Commission has shared there is now a strategic plan published for 25-27, where you can see the direction, and I'm sure addressing the loss of biodiversity, plant biodiversity, and I guess there is a way to have a follow-up project, and we're scoping that. So I think we for sure need to pay close attention and inform you all about that in respect. So yeah, very good question.
If I may add to that, there are basically two follow. There is a bifurcation. One is the ESFRI. And the ESFRI proposal has been submitted, as we heard, on April 8th. So GRACE is covering all the preparatory phase. The progress is covering all the preparatory phase for submitting the ESFRI proposal. And there was a question from the web. Is there scope for other organizations to join ESFRI, the ESFRI proposal? And the answer is yes, absolutely, provided they are relevant. So the ESFRI proposal is different, is a different game from what I understood from the European projects. In the European project, you have a limited budget and you have to distribute them among partners. So you have to be selective. You try to keep the balance between representation of different countries, of different expertises, etc., etc. In the ESFRI roadmap, all the relevant partners of a country can be included because they add weight on the capacity to convince the political deciders. So my view again, it's my view, is that in the ESFRI proposal, we should be inclusive. As inclusive as possible, not gathering every possible partner from every country, but as inclusive as possible for relevant partners that work on non-genetic resource conservation or research. We should be inclusive. And the other roadmap is the one that was mentioned. So how to continue? So progress covers up to the submission of the ESFRI proposal. What do we do in the meanwhile? Do we sit idle and wait for the oracle of the European Union to give its answer, or do we try to keep this initiative together? And I think we should try to keep this initiative together after progress ends. And there are several possible general calls that we would address. The easiest one is a cost action. That's the easy one. A little bit more complicated is because there you will have to be selective, is a Marie Curie network. They are not limited by genes, so you could set up a Marie Curie network. And then there is the most challenging one, is how do you call it? Tech open. But there you have really to have an innovative idea. So there you have to be very selective and select the partners that can bring a completely new perspective to this. So there are general calls that you could use to continue this getting together. But for the ESFRI proposal, we are covered.
Yeah. Yes, may I ask you to confirm it? I'm sorry, but the mobile microphone switches off. So, no, so because that one should be, say, if you speak loudly.
Yes, first. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Sandra. I'm here from Italy. Yes, it's a really very interesting day, I must say. Very different, engaged and positive contributions, and I learned a lot about this initiative, which still, yeah, has some information which is maybe has been presented today. Not everything already well connected, but I think this is normal. And in an activity which is still, say, at the beginning of being shaped. I have one question. So, say, we have a lot of continuing on work on giving stability of what has been done in different fora already, and to make much profit as possible from what has already been reached, and how to put stakeholders together. I have another question, which is related especially to your last presentation. Now you showed one slide where you showed the analysis of other research infrastructures which are already existing, which cover parts of our common interest in the genetic resources community. And I would like to know if it is foreseen, or if you have already started somehow interacting with these other research infrastructures. I mean, you identified what they are doing, where the gaps are, and we want to build synergies. Will that be somehow then based on mutual advantages of synergies? So what Grace produces will be also great synergy with them. Will also be taken by them as useful contribution. So just networking in the other way, not to the inside but to the outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yes, so of course, the idea of also this ESFRI landscape is, as was said a few times, that to not duplicate efforts, to create synergies, to work together, and you know, in this way, basically, be also more cost effective. So we are organizing this workshop tomorrow, especially together with emphasis to hear about their initiative in phenotyping, because this is obviously an aspect that where we can collaborate, where we can, you know, we don't need to create phenotyping facilities for within our Grace RI. We can interact with emphasis to build this synergy. And there's also we've also been in contact with the other research infrastructure that were listed: Disco, Miri, LifeWatch, Metrofood, and also we're in contact. Elixir, of course, very important. And some of those are also represented within our consortium through, you know, common partners that work in both. And there's also now initiatives to connect with the BBMRI and others. And I think it's going to be very important also in view of creating this ESFRI proposal to make sure that we're filling a gap and we're building the synergies with existing research partners and infrastructures. Other questions from the audience? Please.
Should work, but
Yeah, it's a classical is getting nothing in and out.
Yes, I just want to continue on Giovanni soliciting private budgets to participate to the next phase. I would like to hear Sonia. She's still here.
she's
No,
scared away.
she has left. So I would like to hear someone who could express about the will of private readers to continue in the ESFRI project of proposal, and whether such European organization or international organization could be a partner in the system, but maybe you will see that tomorrow. And I am also very interested in mobilizing a lot of partners in the countries that will start or initiate the project in case it is okay. Because in a lot of countries, as our colleague said, we have not sufficient contact. Or the community of conservation and use has not sufficient contact, and this is a very disorganized sector in some countries. There are several NGOs and so on, so we must find a way, each country, to engage them in such an adventure if we are successful. That's all. And once more, I just want to say that ECPGR, as Jens presented, is a community, of course, of conservation and valorization of PGR, and has a lot of experience in many of the things that have been presented today, but it's one active partner, but it's not the one who will be alone. He needs a lot of other institutions and partners, but that was evident. It is that in English, sorry, I lost my English sometimes. This is evident to us, but he has to offer a lot to contribute to the next step after the concept phase. Thank you.
So maybe to respond to Marianne, so Sonia is indeed not here anymore, she had to leave, but since I'm here and work at EuroSeed, could maybe give some thoughts and reflections. I think you need to ask yourself the question, do you want private involvement in your future research infrastructure? Not only money, but also then governance parts, for instance. Also, besides that, Ricardo highlighted, you don't only have seed companies, but also other private actors. So might be worthwhile to look into that. I mean, we are an umbrella organization, so I cannot say all our members will join or all our members don't want to join. So, but of course we could relay that question, but we will get the question, what's in it for us, of course, and what's there. But I wish to highlight, for instance, we have this memorandum of understanding with ECPGR, and I think it has been a long process, but a long and steady process where we have grown, I should say, mutual understanding, etc., and of each other's needs. And I think the EVA networks are a very successful example of how specific collaborations can work. I also remember Roland highlighting that based on the experience at Emphasis, I'm right, that it's usually you have the network and the infrastructure, but then you have this bilateral agreements that are set up, because why should, I should say, a country sign an agreement with an entire network and fulfill all kinds of commitments? So I just want to share here some thoughts and reflections regarding Marianne's, let's say, question of, let's say, the involvement of the private sector, but I can highlight that there is a lot of potential, and that's why I made Sonia talk about potential. A lot of genetic resources uncharacterized, not maintained, being lost, and so on. And that's also of interest, of course, to the companies. Because without plant genetic diversity, yeah, we end up nowhere. So these are just the thoughts and reflections I wanted to share on the opposite sector. And please feel free to join here the floor to make things, Giovanni. And I saw also Carla then, but you have to come forward. I'm sorry. And
if I just, I will be talking more about the EVA networks tomorrow, but I know Marianne is not here, but you are aware of our initiative, obviously. And of course, there are, we are involving with the breeding sector also now on-farm communities. And it depends again, as Nick said, on the interest. So some breeding companies are interested in joining one network on a specific crop, but not the other one. So it's like, you know, it depends a bit on whatever priorities are. So we need to build a product that is useful for the community, but we should be also maybe a bit flexible in addressing the need of the community. So next, Giovanni.
Yeah. So regarding the participation of the private sector, I said before that it's going, in my opinion, the most difficult nut to crack. And let me qualify this. As it was said this morning, private companies are not a unity. They are primarily competing with each other. And second, they have different interests. Big seed companies, small seed companies have different requests and expectations. So I think that without underestimating the mediating capacity of umbrella organizations like Euroseeds and ISF, if I'm not mistaken, we have probably to dedicate a push like this, inviting private companies and looking them in the eyes and understanding exactly what their needs are, what they expect from us. I think this is the best way to try to understand, to find a mutual agreement on what they are willing to offer. And I will discuss it before we feel. You cannot ask them to share their own private phenotypic data. This is competitive research. And it's fully justified that they keep it from themselves, because making them public means making them available to their competitor. But you can ask them to contribute in other ways. So we have to understand what their needs are. Their needs are diversified because the seed sector is not a big unity. And to do that properly, we have to look them in the eyes, discuss with them one whole day. That's my take.
I just wanted to add that we are working also with the Association of Producers. We targeted really broadly with them, so it's not only seed companies, so producers and Association of Producers. It's another layer of complication, but I think this could be the same pillar of end users of the genetic resources.
Yes, I think that's what I tried to do with the whole value chain. Please.
Hi, hello, I'm Carla Trinheiro, I'm from the emphasis side. And I was listening to Marianne, and I think it could be useful if I share a little bit the experience of the Portuguese community in its approach to emphasis. So I think it's really important that every country that wants to join this effort and to join the ESFRI project, it's really important, and we found that really, really important, that you organize as a kind of a national node or a kind of joint interest groups, because in the end, it's not the research institutions or associations that join a research infrastructure, it's the country. So if you could engage your relevant ministry from the very beginning, work with them, discuss possibilities, limitations, that will be very, very important and will help the ESFRI project to be successful. So don't wait for tomorrow, start today and discuss with your ministry representative as many as you could. So we started in very, very slow, and I'm very proud to say that we are one of the countries that keep going on emphasis and trying to do our best. So please, don't give up, okay?
Thank you, Carla. Jens, you wanted to say?
Thank you very much. I just want to give you, I fully recognize that the industry have different many times competing interests. I will just give you two examples of two very promising examples. In the late 80s, early 90s, we had at that time we had two competing plant breeding companies in Sweden, and they collaborated with the agriculture university on disease resistance in barley, using wild barley, Bordino spontaneum, and sharing the results on equal basis. So everything that was being produced, all the breeding, all the progenies that were being produced were shared equally among the companies. That was a very successful project. And the second example is the one that is actually coordinated by Norgem right now. It's a public-private partnership project in pre-breeding, where all breeding companies in the Nordic countries collaborate together with Norgem on material, and results are equally shared. So I don't know if we are different in the Nordic region, but I think it can be done. If there is if companies see that there's a mutual benefit, they will. I think they will contribute and collaborate. So thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martyn. I'm coming from the Research Institute in Belgium. I just wanted to highlight some experience that we got inside ongoing European project, InnoBreed. It is dealing with developing innovative action for organic food breeding. And the starting point is really to work with the largest diversity as possible and to make use of genetic sources. And we made a survey to define which are the next future targets for breeding and for also the users. We are working with trees, so perennial plants and also vegetatively propagated plants. It's specific topic, and we are more dealing with longer term objectives. And also concerning the breeding aspects, we have the first is to define which are the traits that we want to achieve, what is missing, and one broad aspect that we got from the community was robustness. Robustness means a better capacity of the plants to adapt themselves to stresses. It is a large concept of abiotic and biotic stresses, but we need plants that are more adapted to extremes, climate, to extreme stresses, and to have a broader view of what a plant can be adapted to. We don't know what. So that's the first thing. The second one is we want also to be able to use directly genetic sources, not only to use them in breeding. So the direct use of genetic sources is also a topic that we need to take into account. The second one is to when we have some goal or some objectives, pre-breeding is a much important aspect between genetic resources and breeding. The gap is very often pre-breeding. How to bring material that's not finished, but that we can more easily share. Pre-breeding is easier to share than most advanced material. So that was also something that we are working together. And then the last point that I wanted to highlight is that there are many ways of utilization and uses. So that I totally agree with the people who, yes, you speak about there is a community of users. And for example, we are more and more working with people dealing with participatory breeding. So to involve genetic resource managers, farmers, breeders, and scientists to work together, and consumers to build a larger community to come back to come to a results, and also to develop perhaps more local foods. And also one point was also by we had a workshop in Switzerland, and the point came back also that nutritional quality of food is also very important. And we are not taking so much importance on this aspect, but I think it's also a very important topic for the human health. Good food with nutrient value is also very important. So that was some ideas that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Okay, so I just have a couple of comments, but Giovanni probably. He's probably closer. So just relating to what was already said earlier on. So one is that when EMSIS became a project, the ESFRI Roadmap in 2021, there were a number of health proposal projects which weren't successful. And although I wasn't around at the time, I have heard that the reason why they weren't is because they weren't able to demonstrate that they really were a research industry, and that they were more a collection of researchers, community, etc. So very much like I think that's one of the first questions. So I think it's important when you make a proposal that you do demonstrate that you're a research infrastructure, you're going to, in the long medium term, provide access, facilities, transplant tests, things like this. So that's you need to emphasize that during the proposal. And then the second thing is the lady quite recently said that in Portugal she's assistant with contacting the ministries, and I think you shouldn't forget that you need these signed documents from the ministries, and it will take, like, once you've got everything pre-agreed, it takes 1 or 2 months to collect the signatures. So you need to be well. So I think her advice about getting a representative for each country, and that person become the main contact point and start to speak to the minister, the science minister, and then whoever's going to be the lead country will have to speak to the finance ministry to get the financial. So, and the sooner you start that, either it's before summer or certainly straight after the summer holidays, you need to start to do that, because you need those letters. So, and it does take time. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your inputs. We have, let's say, about 5 minutes left. Giovanni, would you be able to make some concluding remarks? And then after that, I will give you some instructions and maybe a goodie.
Well, I think that today's meeting was very useful, at least to me. I'm not a PGR expert, learned a lot about PGR, as I always do in this day. And I learned a lot about weaknesses, which are important to address, be addressed, want to be successful. So, and one weakness, admittedly, is we have to show we are researching, but we will be a research infrastructure, not just UESCO on ECPGR on steroids. That's one point we have to address. The second point, and I think we can address it, I think already in progress we have an excellent research organizations that can provide services. And let me give you just a couple of services that progress could provide that are essential. And scientific services that progress could provide and that are essential, and that one of which we have thought about and one of which just came to my mind. One, we at the beginning stressed the importance of plant pandemics for sustainability of our agriculture, and this is going to worsen. It's not going to get better. So there is in the ECPGR community or in Europe at large, there is no centralized facility for surveillance, phytosanitary surveillance and quarantine. Nothing. So if UG99 invades Europe tomorrow, we will not know what to do. Individual countries will try to take on the measures, but we don't have a prepared Europe-wide surveillance system that can tackle the problem. This could be job for the grazing infrastructure. Actually, we have thought of it. We have a deliverable on methods for phytosanitary surveillance. That's a very important aspect. But let me give you another one we didn't think about and came to my mind just now. Okay, we are talking about climate change. The need to reduce CO2 emissions. The agricultural sector is emitting about 10% of the CO2 that's emitted in Europe. So what are we going to do, and can the grace infrastructure contribute to that? So there, we would need something we don't have in the present time. We would need climate modeling. We would need and how the varieties will fare in changing environment. We will need soil modeling because lots of CO2, the greenhouse gas emissions come from the soil. And how the plant biomass we cultivate going to interact. This is just, thinking loud. It's not necessarily going to become a reality. But I think there are a lot of very important scientific services that this infrastructure can provide to make European agriculture more sustainable. And we have to think along these lines because, as it was said, we have to convince the ESFRI, first of all, our government, then the ESFRI organization, that we are going to be really a research infrastructure, be useful. I think that's more or less what I wanted to say.